Quay chưa?
Quay đấy.
Sao mày? Có tiếng video không?
Không có tiếng nhỉ?
Không em ơi.
Không. Tiếng chưa?
We are the planning process.
Được rồi đấy.
Into the execution of a project, and I like to have them in one file.
That would be wonderful.
What that helps us do is every time we sit down to have a conversation, I can bring up that one file, and then as there's information to populate, I can just go ahead and go to the appropriate template and then enter that information in. The first thing that we want to create is a charter. A charter is basically an agreement that, yes, this is a project, this is what we know about it at this point, it's usually pretty broad, and this is who the project manager is. But there's some other fields that typically companies will create in order to make that agreement, okay? So if we look at this charter here, I have some general information. So we've got some names and dates, and then we have a description of the problem or issue, and then what the purpose of our project is. So this is something that will be our North Star. When we come back and maybe we're trying to make a decision, we might come back and look at this.
Right.
There's some other information in this particular template that I have: the business case, goals and metrics, some deliverables, what's within scope and outside scope. I always like to say, hey, we're not going to do this, and be crystal clear on that. I also have some resources and then some information about the benefits to our customers. Now, here is where we get a little bit more specific. We've got some cost savings, enhanced revenues, productivity, and other things associated with cost. Maybe sometimes this is time, sometimes it's cost, sometimes it's both, so you may have to modify this.
Right, because I'm noticing you have enhanced revenues, and I don't believe we would be using that one.
Okay, so when we look at putting your charter together, that would be a field that we would just omit.
Right.
So before we jump in and create our own charter, what I'd like to do is I'd like to show you a little bit about the project management foundational processes. So initiation typically is when the charter is created. This will be when we decide, hey, this is a real project, it is funded, and we're moving forward with it. And when we create the charter, we come out of initiation and into planning. All right, so you ready?
I'm ready.
Let's do this. Let's come to a blank worksheet, and let's give us something to start with.
Okay.
So I will go ahead and let's paste some of the information that we had in the previous, just so we don't have to type. So in the top here, we have a title, right? Mm-hmm. So this is the project charter. Then we have our general project information. So let's start with a project name. What's the name of your project?
Intro to BB Products.
Okay. And then who is the project sponsor? Who is the person that is going to write the checks? They're the ones in charge of the budget.
Charles Reeves.
Okay. All right. And then the project manager is Barbara. So the next thing is the organizational unit. Is this for the North American unit, or is this worldwide?
It's Southeast.
Okay. The primary process that's impacted here, would it be training? Or?
Yeah, it's definitely like orientation training, something along those lines, but training works.
Good. When do you expect to start this? Is there a constraint?
January 1.
Okay. When do you hope to finish this at this point?
Let's go with what you've got there into March 2019. That looks about right for what we're trying to do.
Okay. Is there an expected savings associated with this?
Not at this point.
And do we have a constraint as far as cost goes?
It's all internal costs, and that's off dollars.
So should I put to be determined?
Yeah, let's just leave it with to be determined.
All right. So the great thing about this is these are fields that we would tend to use quite a bit. When we are setting this up, typically this is going to be information that we'll see on the other sheets.
Okay.
So let's come down here to the bottom and let's type in charter. Let's go ahead and put the problem or issue in here. Now this can be an opportunity or a problem. And it sounds like with training it might be an opportunity, right?
Well, what we've discovered is we have an introduction to the products, but it's not effectively preparing our employees to move forward. So we're trying to improve their understanding of what we actually sell.
Okay. How about that?
That works.
Let's go ahead and add another one. And the next thing that we'll talk about is doing requirements. A lot of times you will want to put the same information at the top of each one of these, especially if you're going to print it or... So let me show you a little trick here. What I can do is let's grab, we'll just go ahead and grab these top 3. And then we can put those up here. All right, now for the project name, what I can do is I can press equals, like you're going to do a function or formula, come over here to charter, and then click on the cell where you have the project name. Notice that you have the marching ants around there.
Right.
We'll press enter, and now that will show up here.
Now, can I copy that down and will it grab from the cells below it on the previous spreadsheet?
So let's take a look. If I come to the bottom right-hand corner, click and drag that down, now we have all 3 of those. And the great thing about this is, let's say that somebody says, hey, we want to make a really great name. We're going to call this Project Engage, or, they put some marketing spin onto it. Then if I change this here, notice what happens here.
It updates
So
right there.
That's right. You only have to update it once.
And we do find ourselves changing things. Sometimes the sponsor changes, sometimes the manager changes. So being able to change it in one place will be very useful.
Let's go back to our charter. And I would want to clean this up a little bit. I would want to maybe open up some of these rows. For instance, problem or issue looks like it's okay, but if we put our cursor right underneath the 14 here, row 14, for purpose of project, we can open this up by clicking and dragging so that we have plenty of room and we can see what we need to see in there. Also, if you look up here at the top, notice that we have, it looks like some overhang, and I would want to come up here and get rid of this fill, so that's under Home and Font. Come down and choose No Fill. Or if you have other things in there, you could always come up to the editing group and choose Clear and just clear everything out of there. Once you go through the process of cleaning this up, then we are on our way to a great project charter.
Christina, I like that this looks more like a database than I'm working in a spreadsheet, because I think sometimes people look at a spreadsheet and they're like, oh, I don't know what to do with this. But I liked the overall look of what you showed me at the beginning, and it looks like this is going to be very easy to do. I'm excited to see how to do the rest of the tabs.
Chọn file nữa.
Hello and welcome to Vertex 42. Watch this video to see how I created this Gantt chart in Google Sheets. It includes features like a dynamic timeline, as well as showing the progress of each task. First off, I'll add the basic information we'll want, including a spot to enter the project start date. The critical information for a Gantt chart is a list of tasks, each with a start date, the duration in days, and the end date. We typically group tasks within phases or categories, so I'll add 4 tasks under phase 1. Next, I'll add a start date and the number of days it will take to complete. I'll calculate the end date by taking the start date, adding the days, then subtracting 1. I'll have task 2 start 1 day after task 1 ends. Now I'll fill in the rest of the data for us to work with. You can add and subtract dates because they are stored as numbers and just displayed in different formats. copy these formulas down to create a second project phase. I'll make phase 2 start one day after the final task of phase 1. The next step is to create the date range or timeline for the chart area. I'll start with June 1st and drag that 6 more cells to the right to create a week. I want to display just the days of the month, so I'll use the custom number format D. It's important to realize these cells are storing the full date but only displaying the day of the month. Now I want to display the first letter of the day of the week in the cell below the date. First, I'll use the text function to display the abbreviation of the day of the week. Then I'll use the left function to grab just the first letter of that text. Next, I'll merge these 7 cells and display the date of the first day of the week. To display the full date, I'll need to change the number format back to the date default. Now I'll select the columns using Control Space, and then copy them. I'll use a keyboard shortcut to paste just the formatting. Then I'll drag the data to copy it to the right. I want to add a 4th week, so I'll insert 7 more columns and copy the formulas 1 more week to the right. To make the timeline dynamic, I'll link the first cell of the chart area to the project start date. Then I'll use a formula to add 1 day to each of the next dates, and drag that to the right. Now when the project start date changes, the timeline will change too. First, I'll select the entire worksheet and change the vertical alignment to center. Next, I'll adjust the column widths. If you're looking for a more precise adjustment, you can click on the column drop-down and select Resize Column. Then you can type in the exact number you want. You can also select multiple columns and right-click to get the Resize Columns option. When formatting, I also like to turn off the grid lines. Now I'll do some general formatting of the first couple rows to make the important information stand out even more. I want to emphasize that the project start date can be modified, so I'll also add a border around it. Next, I'll select this area and set the horizontal alignment to center. I like table headers that have a slightly smaller font and are bold with a dark background and a light colored font. Next, I'll make each week's chart labels a bit more interesting. I made the main date left justified in bold. Now I'll decrease the font size to match the table header. I'll add a light background color and a dark gray border. Now I can use the Format Painter to apply those changes to the other 3 weeks. To make the Gantt chart easier to read, I'll emphasize the phase rows with a background color and then add horizontal borders for the tasks. I'll use the Format Painter again to apply those changes to the Phase 2 section. We could add bars by filling in the chart manually, but that's way too time-consuming. So instead we'll use conditional formatting to fill in these cells when the dates at the top of these columns are within the start and end dates. First we'll select all of these cells and go to Format, Conditional Formatting. Under Format Cells If, I'll select Custom Formula Is from the drop-down menu. Now we're ready to type in our formula. It's important to create the formula based on the upper left cell in the range. We'll use the logical function AND, setting the date in row 4 greater than or equal to the start, comma, and the date less than or equal to the end. Think of this formula as being copied to the rest of the cells in the applied range, so we need to make the rows of the date references fixed by adding a $sign in front of the row numbers. We'll also make the columns of the start and end dates fixed by adding $signs in front of the column letters. I want the color of the bars to match the design better, so I'll change them to a dark blue. Now we have a basic Gantt chart, but let's continue to add more features. Our timeline currently starts on the same day as the project start, but I want it to always start on Monday. I'll edit this formula to subtract the weekday of the project start. After the comma, I'll type 3, which makes Monday a 0. Now the weeks in the timeline will start on Monday regardless. Next, I'm going to add an input that lets you scroll through the chart. Under project start, I'll enter display week. Next to that, I'll enter a 1, and then I'll use the format painter to make it match the project start. I'll fix the 1 being changed to a date by going to Format, Number, Automatic. Now I'll edit the first day in the timeline again to add the display week minus 1 times 7. Now when I change the display week, the dates in the timeline will update, letting me scroll through the chart. Next, I want to highlight the current day in the timeline, which is actually pretty simple. I'll select the rows in the timeline with the day number and letter, then go to Format, Conditional Formatting, and select Custom Formula Is from the drop-down. The formula will be a comparison of the date at the top of the column to the function today. I'll make the highlight red and the font white and bold. First, I'm going to insert 3 new columns. This first new column is for who the task is assigned to. The next 2 columns are where we'll show the task progress. I'll change these cells to the percentage format. Then I'll enter in some example data. In the next column, we'll create bars that represent these percentages. To do this, we'll use the sparkline function. First, I'll have it reference the cell with the percent. For the chart type option, I'll use bar. Then I'll set the color of the bar to gray. Finally, I'll set the maximum value to 1, so 100% shows a full bar. I'll take that formula and drag it down to the other cells in phase 1. I'll need to fix this error that happens when the reference cell is blank. It's an easy fix. We'll simply use the if error function that returns a blank when the percent cell is empty. I'll copy this updated formula, select the cells I want to apply it to, then go to Edit, Paste Special, Paste Formula Only. I'll test it out in phase 2 to make sure it works correctly. I'm going to speed this next section up a bit, where I update the formatting of the new progress columns we just created. To finish things off, I'd like to see the duration of each phase, as well as group the tasks for easy viewing. I'll first use the min function to grab the earliest start date from phase 1's tasks. Then I'll use the max function to get the latest date. So now that we have a start and end date in the phase row, the bars will appear automatically. Now I'll copy and paste the min and max formulas into phase 2. Grouping rows is a great way to toggle the data you want to see in print. I'll simply select the rows I want to group, then go to Data, Group Rows. I can now see on the left the rows I have grouped, and I can show or hide them by clicking on the icon. For phase 2, I'll use a keyboard shortcut to group the rows. Now you can easily show or hide the tasks for both viewing as well as printing. I hope that along with this Gantt chart, you've also learned some great new skills in Google Sheets. If you like this video and want to see more, please subscribe to our channel.
Sao? Thế đó. Thì giờ học cách ra đăng video chứ. Lấy video ấy. Sao mới thả?
Ok.